What do you think about the way Nick has run the camp?
The thing I really like about Sirianni is that he's doing things his way, and he's pretty unapologetic about it.
We are the Mac and Mac guys here on Birds 365 on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Dirty Mac and Johnny Mac. I just looked over my shoulder and Good Morning Football's on, and they got Bill Goldberg as a guest, which kind of bummed me and Johnny out because we're big wrestling fans.
SummerSlam week, that's why.
He's going for the WWE heavyweight title against the almighty Bobby Lashley, so I was jealous for about a second. Then I realized, yeah, but we got Dave Zangaro coming up. Yeah. The hell with Bill Who needs Bill Goldberg? Washed up old fool. No, we got Dave Zangaro from Comcast Sportsnet joining us here on, I still call it Comcast Sportsnet, NBC Sports Philly, here with us on Birds 365. DZ, I got a weird question for you. Today is show like 93. We've done 93 shows on this Birds 365 thing. We usually get 2 guests to show, sometimes only 1. So probably 160 guests so far. I never asked this of one of my guests before. What were you doing right before you dialed us up, you linked into the show, and hopped on to be able to talk to us?
I brushed my teeth, actually.
There we go.
I realized that I was drinking some coffee, then I realized, let me brush my teeth, and I timed it up well. Got the full, I have an electric toothbrush too, so I had to wait for the buzz, and then I dialed you guys up.
There we go. See, number
one, don't brush your teeth for us, please. It's Mac and Mac here. You don't need to do that. And number 2, the reason why I asked was your timing was impeccable. I had just said, and Dave Zangaro is going to join us. Boom, and you popped into the little screen that we can tell that you hooked up and clicked on the link to be able to come on the show. So I thought maybe you were actually watching the first hour of the Birds 365. You had better things to do, like brush your teeth. That's what
I never listen to any show that I'm about to join because I don't want to let it sway what I would think.
I do the same thing, Dave. Yeah. I do the same thing. I never listen to the show because I don't want to be swayed by the host or the thinking, or I want to give my opinion. But I thought, if I would have guessed, I thought you were on Eagles social media watching Jalen Reagor's catch, which if everybody looks in the background, they're all looking at the catch, but right there to see it was Dave Zangaro. So how good was that catch?
It was great, and people were giving me grief because I didn't look like that amazed by it. But what you couldn't see is I had sunglasses on, and my eyes were about as wide as they could have been. I mean, it's one of the best catches I've ever seen in training camp. It's better than his one a few weeks ago. And the only other one I can think of in Eagles camp was actually by a guy named Caleb Jones, who was undrafted out of Arizona State. Maybe he's actually Zay Jones' brother.
Yeah.
He made a great catch a few years ago in 11-on-11, which to me means a little bit more. And it was like a diving, one-handed grab. But, I mean, it's a special catch. But the problem, the thing with Reagor is we know he's talented. It's not everyone understands that he's talented. It's just, can he be consistent and can he do it when it matters? And we don't know that yet. But it's a good sign. And we all tweet about it. We all talk about it because we have to. When you see a catch like that, it's amazing. Like no human should be able to do that. And then you have all the skeptics, and I get it, but you can appreciate that catch for what it is. It's a fantastic catch. It shows the talent of a former first-round pick. Now we all get the situation with him that he's got to be more consistent. He's got to do it in games, but the talent's there, and it was good to see.
Now, great question by John, and I didn't even think I was going there, but I'll go there now since you went there. You're right. We see guys do this. Guys catch the ball with one hand. Beckham was the first one that made everybody's attention. Now it seems like receivers are practicing to be able to do that. And with the gloves, it makes a big difference. Certainly never catches like that just weren't made 20, 25 years ago. Is it now acceptable not to try for the ball with 2 hands? If you go up with only one hand and your coach goes, get both hands on the ball, you go, why? I can catch it one-handed. Have you seen me, coach? I can catch one hand. I don't need 2 hands. Has it changed the way receiving coaches actually coach receivers in the league anymore?
No, I think they'd still prefer if you can get 2 hands on it. get two hands on it. But there are a lot of situations where you kind of can't. And the Beckham play that everyone always thinks about is the perfect example. Even DeAndre Hopkins had a catch very similar to that a couple years after. But it's if you're falling backwards, it's tough. If you can't get two hands out, you'll land on your head and get a concussion. So it's a skill to have. It's not something, there are some receivers who embellish a little bit, and you can tell there are some guys who want to have the highlight reel catch, and they'll do things when they don't need to. And that's the stuff that I think would bother coaches more. But it's a skill to have. And I think there are times where that's the only way you're going to catch the ball is if you throw one paw up there and grab it. So I think it's a little bit of both, Jody. I don't think it's like receivers coaches are saying, yeah, let's work on these one-handed because we don't care if you get two hands on it. But I think they understand that if you have that in your toolbox, there are going to be situations like that kind of call for it. And it's a nice skill to have.
And I think that was a perfect example, Dave, because everybody focused on the one-handed catch. There's a guy with a 42-inch vertical leap going about 42 inches up in the air.
Yeah, he
maxed
and the
body control, that to me was the more impressive part. The vertical leap to get up there, the body control to come down in the field of play for the touchdown is even more impressive than the one-handed catch aspect of it. He couldn't get two hands on that thing.
Yeah, and let's not forget the timing either, because it's great to have a 42-inch vert, but if you jump a second early, you're not getting the ball either. So you have to have a feel for when the pass is going to get there. Because I've seen a bunch of guys be able to jump high, and they jump at the wrong time, and that doesn't do you any good. So you're right. There are other parts of the catch aside from the one-handed aspect that were really impressive. And we just got to see him stack them, because it's not like it's funny. The last one-handed catch he had a couple weeks ago, it was such a microcosm of what Jalen Reagor's been, because he had the one-handed catch against Slay. It was a great grab. And then the very next time he undresses him with a quick stutter move, and then he drops a ball that was wide open. So we just need consistency from him.
Dave, glad to hear you weren't listening before you came on, because I asked John a question just before we punched you up, and I want to get your take on it as well. We were talking about Tyreek Jackson, who's had a real nice camp, caught a ball in the preseason opener. We expect him to play this week against the Patriots. He's kind of flashed as a converted quarterback to tight end. The Eagles have their two starting tight ends. All right, somebody's got to start. If they start non-12 personnel, doesn't much matter. Both are going to play. Both are going to get the ball thrown their way. They re-signed Richard Rodgers, who was pretty damn good for him last year. I don't think they can carry four tight ends, but they might have to if they want to keep Tyreek Jackson. If they're afraid he's going to get scooped up if they run him through, would they expose Richard Rodgers again and try and re-sign him? What do you think of Howie Roseman as a guy who plays the roster management game, the around the edges type moves that you have to make to get yourself the best, not only 53-man, but 69-man roster, adding the practice squad in? Would you call that a strength, a weakness, or somewhere in between for Howie Roseman as a general manager?
Yeah, I think he's pretty good at it. He knows how to game the system a little bit, but they got burned last year with Noah Tongiai. They exposed in the waivers, the tight end, undrafted tight end, and he ends up in Indianapolis. They lost him because of it. I wouldn't expose Tyree Jackson. And I'm normally a guy who's very skeptical. A guy will have a great training camp, and fans are like, oh, they're going to lose him, and it never happens. We saw that with, Deontay Burnett last year, who did just about everything he could to make the roster. They cut him. People were upset, and they were able to scoot him through to the practice squad, no problem. I think Tyree Jackson will get claimed. It's because he's so early in his transition, and he's already this good. He has all the physical tools. We know he's 6'7". He looks so smooth. I think another team would use a roster spot on that guy as a developmental player. I don't think the Eagles should risk losing him. If anything, if we're talking about gaming the system a little bit, why not try to cut Richard Rodgers? He's a vested veteran, so if he's on the roster day one, you have to guarantee his base salary. And we've seen them do this in years past with Najee Good was a pretty noteworthy one. But you can bring him back in week 2, and now he has non-guaranteed base salary, and you can kind of manipulate it a little bit that way. That's what I would lean toward right now. I wouldn't risk losing Tyree Jackson. I think there's too much there too early, and the ceiling's too high. I'd keep him around.
Yeah, good point. And because Richard is vested, which I didn't mention, so that means he doesn't have to get through waivers, and you can kind of do some backdoor lawyering and try to say, look, Richard, we'll bring it back in week 2 and kind of try to finagle things that way. Howie is good at that kind of stuff. I do want to steer you back to receivers because I want to talk about the group as a whole, Dave. I think there was a lot of good from Jalen Reagor against the Patriots, a lot of good from Quez Watkins, continues to have a great summer. On day 2, though, the best receiver on the field was J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. In my estimation, is he getting back into the conversation of being on this team? At the same time, Travis Fulgham is kind of had a bad week or so.
It's a fair question. And yeah, it's funny because he had such a good day yesterday and I really wanted to tweet about it and I just didn't because it's just not worth it. Yeah. But no, you're right. He was very good. The problem is he's been very good in training camp before. Yeah. So I like a lot of people. I'm like, all right, it's great that he's playing well in training camp and that's all they have to go on. It's not like, this coaching staff isn't going to be like, yeah, but he's done it before because they've never been here. So you're right. He's fighting for a roster spot. If they keep 6, he's probably in, I think, over John Hightower, who wasn't having a very good camp and then ended up on the injured list. He's coming back now, so we'll see where he's at. But if they keep 6, he's probably in. If they keep 5, he might be out. But you're right, Travis Fulgham's been kind of a disappointment. It's tough because with the new coaching staff, we don't really know how they view him. And then you're trying to figure out, well, how much of it is Howie and how much of it is the coaching staff? Because if it's Howie, he's not going to want to cut the former second-round pick. And speaking about guys getting claimed, his pedigree as a former second-round pick might lead him to get – he hasn't done anything to deserve that, but someone might take a chance on him because there was talent there a few years ago when he got drafted. But if you cut him, I think you're willing to lose him at that point. It's interesting. I think he's in the conversation, and I know a lot of fans are ready to move on. The team shouldn't overreact. The team shouldn't be like he's been a waste of a pick. Let's just cut our losses because if he's the 53rd guy on the roster, so be it. The problem for him is that he doesn't really play a lot of special teams.
Yeah, that
is like if you keep 6 receivers, that's 6 guy. Yeah, typically
usually has to help on special teams. Yeah.
They don't really have any receivers to play teams.
I do think that the new coaching staff, though, has used him differently, and they're using him in the slot in the red zone to kind of use his size, at least at times. Do you think he could be that sort of situational player? They're looking at him that way. Yeah,
maybe. To me, that's like when I heard they were moving him in the slot this summer, my initial reaction was kind of disappointment in a way because that's not why they drafted him.
No,
they didn't draft him to be a big-bodied slot. They drafted him because of his skills outside and his ability to have that body control. So I think it was a team looking at him like, let's try to get something out of this player. He's decent enough to get something out of him, and I think that's what they're doing. Is it worth keeping him on the roster to be a very situational, big-bodied slot receiver?
Oh, by the way, if the Eagles are in the red zone, I'm in 12 possession. I want both Goddard and Ertz on the field. So you're taking your slot receiver off the field anyway. So how many plays is that actually going to come to over the course of the year that the Eagles are going to be in the red zone and have to make a decision on the amount of players there? That's just my thought. All right, Dave, I wanted to ask about a different position, and that would be safety. No, you got to do a little crystal ball work for us here because we still have 2 preseason games to do. We've got injuries to evaluate. We know that if everyone is healthy, that's one thing. But if guys aren't, like first game against Atlanta, when they take the field, if there are 2 starting safeties out there, who are the 2 starting safeties?
Anthony Harris and
who?
I don't know about. It's impossible to know. He's been working on a side field. There's a lot of time. We're almost a full month before, like 3.5 weeks before the first game. if Rodney, I don't know if Rodney will be ready for week 1, but I do think he's going to be far enough along that they're not going to use a PUP designation on him. So I think that even if he's not ready for week 1, he'll be ready before week 6. So he's going to be on the roster. If it's not him, my money will be on Kayvon Wallace. I know that they've been kind of working Marcus Epps and Andrew Adams at that other spot, but I think Kayvon was playing pretty well before he got hurt. He's back now. I think that he gives them a better shot. Epps isn't a bad player, by the way, either. I think Jim Schwartz put him in a lot of unfavorable positions that put a bad taste in people's mouths from Marcus Epps. He's not a Pro Bowl type player, but he's good enough to be on the roster. I think they might keep 5 if Rodney isn't ready for week 1. My 5th would actually be Elijah Riley, who's been a kind of a core special teams guy and had that big interception in the preseason game over Andrew Adams, who, if those two guys are close, Adams and Elijah Riley, I'll take the guy who's younger with more upside. So that's the one thing I'll say about safety. If Rodney's not ready for week 1, I think they keep 5.
Well, preseason week 2 is almost upon us, Dave. So I want to ask you, we tried to get this out of Nick Sirianni, couldn't yesterday. How much do you want to see Jalen Hurts play in preseason game 2? How much do you think he's going to play?
Yeah, I think maybe, what did he play? 2 series, 10 snaps?
10 snaps, yeah.
Yeah, based on what Sirianni said, one of the more interesting answers Sirianni's given us was about joint practices versus preseason games and how much more he's willing to show and willing to use his offense in these joint practices. That was telling to me because not that I don't want to see Jalen Hurts play, but it's almost like if you're not going to run your offense in the preseason games, how valuable is it? If we're not really going to see what the offense is with Jalen, and they're not. I mean, they're not going to show. You've seen it, John. Like what we see in training camp and what we saw in that first preseason game, it was so much more vanilla. Like in training camp, we're really seeing them utilize his legs as a decoy or as a fundamental building block of the offense. And they're not going to do that in the preseason. So honestly, I want to see him maybe 2 or 3 series, maybe a quarter, but not much more than that, because if this is the way they're viewing the joint practices, it's more valuable.
Dave, another day is come and gone with NFL practices around the league and the joint practice that the Eagles had here, and a bunch of teams are doing that over the next couple of days. And the Sam Bradford scenario is not kicked in yet. No very productive tight end has gotten injured in the National Football League where Howie Roseman said, hey, I got this Ertz guy. I've been asking for a 2 or 3 all along. I'll give him to you right now. So Zach Ertz is still here. We know that Zach gets along fine with his teammates. We know his teammates like Zach a great deal. Seems like the coaching staff has come around to the fact that, damn, this might be the best pass catcher we have, or at least is active right now. We need to get him on the field. The question I have is Zach Ertz going to be mentally good as a Philadelphia Eagle? First game, second game, it can change and it can peak and valley too. But it looked like he was definitely going to be out of here. He ended up coming back. Wasn't always the happiest guy at practice when camp opened up, but seemed to have some fun talking to Bill Belichick this week. Is Zach Ertz going to be mentally zoned in 100% if he is out there week number 1 against Atlanta?
I like angry Zach Ertz. It was funny. Last year I think about him admitting that all the contract stuff kind of got to him. And that worried me going into this camp because I'm thinking, how is he going to put this stuff out of his mind and be a productive player? I give him a ton of credit because he's had a really good training camp. He's had a few drops here and there, but overall, really impressed. And I put him out another 53-man roster projection today. This is the first time I've had him on there. I'm still not totally convinced he's going to be here, but he might be. I mean, he might be here. And the one thing Nick Sirianni said, it's not going to force his hand to play more 12 personnel. It is. I mean, it absolutely is. I don't know how you can say
Nick.
Yeah. I don't know how you can say
it's not. Somewhere else down the street. Yeah. Nobody's buying.
Yeah, because if you have Zach Ertz on the team, he's got to play. You're not going to just bench him and pay him $8.5 million. And that's another thing for Ertz. As much as he might want to be gone, you don't want to get cut. Because if he gets cut and he has to sign somewhere, he's not getting $8.5 million. And the Eagles aren't going to cut him anyway. they'd trade him. I still think Howie would trade him if he got an offer that was right. But Howie's been asking a high price, and I think they are willing to bring him back if he doesn't get it.
Yeah, I'm going to talk, Dave, about what I think is the strength of this team. And you and I were talking about it a little bit on the sideline. That right side of the offensive line is just unbelievable at times. Now, it's okay to question whether Brandon Brooks is going to be healthy, whether Lane Johnson is going to be healthy with what they've been through from a physical perspective. But how good are those guys on the right side? The offensive line as a whole, now that Isaac Seumalo is back, we know Jordan Mailata is going to be the starter at least early in the season, despite what Nick Sirianni says. This is going to be a top 5 offensive line. Is that alone, if healthy, and we always have to put that caveat in there, does that make the Eagles better than people think just because of that offensive line?
Sure. I mean, if the Eagles have success this year, it's because of their lines, and that's by design. It's not a secret. That's the way they wanted to build this team. Yeah, the health caveat is there for sure. But I mean, yeah, if healthy, think about how athletic this offensive line is, and Jordan at this stage of his career is more athletic than Jason Peters was at the end of his run at left tackle. So you're talking, and Isaac is an underrated athlete too. He kind of gets overlooked, and he hasn't been like a Pro Bowl caliber player, but he's very athletic. He can get to the second level. All these guys can. So you start to think about, okay, screen game, which is going to be a big part of Sirianni's offense. Every single one of those guys can get to the second level and take on a backer. So there's a lot they can do. And that right side of the line, if healthy, it's the best right side of the line in football. I don't think it's even close. Now, the Brooks thing, he had the hamstring. I wouldn't worry about that. The one that scares me a little bit more is Lane, and he's looked good out here, but that's an ankle injury that we thought was fixed last year too. So I want to see him in games. I want to see him put together a few weeks. This is an ankle injury for a big offensive lineman who is playing above his natural weight. I think Lane's going to be one of those guys where when he retires, he's going to slim down. So he's had all this weight on a bum ankle for 3 years. It scares you a little bit, but if they're healthy, they're really good.
All right, DZ, know this next question is going to have an answer of 100%. And I'm going to give you 3 choices. So I want you to break it out to the percentage chance each of these 3 choices could actually happen. Andre Dillard. Andre Dillard is here as a backup, percentage chance. Andre Dillard is traded between now and the first game of the season, percentage chance. Andre Dillard is cut because they can't justify keeping him. No one wants to trade for him. They decide it's time to just move on. They cut him. Give me the percentage of each of those possibilities. One of those 3 is going to happen. How would you break them out percentage-wise?
Make me do math here. All right. 80% he's a backup. 19% he's traded. 1% he's cut.
He didn't say 0, McMullen.
Yeah.
You're at 0, and Zangaro gave me 1.
There's always something. 0. Dave's a smarter, so he gives.
I mean, what if, you never know, but I'm leaving myself a little wiggle room. But exactly. I don't think they're going to be able to trade him either because he's trading for a hurt guy who's never
he's hurt
played.
Right now. Yeah. So, nobody's going to trade for him hurt. Somebody would trade if he gets back healthy. I mean, we know how this
still week to week.
Yeah. So it's going to be a while. Last question for me, Dave, is Nick Sirianni, the head coach of this team. And we talked about it a lot. Till Bill Belichick got here, they went 2 hours. Sometimes it's 70 minutes. Sometimes it's 75. And thank you, Nick Sirianni, closed circuit, for doing that. But it's looked good. I mean, we only had 10 snaps. Everybody looked sharp. What do you think about the way Nick has run the camp?
The thing I really like about Sirianni is that he's doing things his way, and he's pretty unapologetic about it. And that's everything. That's the short practices. That's his kind of goofy at times competitions in the locker room and in the building. everything he's done has kind of been his own way, but he backs it up. He has a reason for everything he's doing, which is important because when you're dealing with professionals, you have to have, like, it's not good enough to just say, this is why we're doing it because this is my decision. He has a reason to back it all up. I've been impressed by him, honestly. And I think it was a little vindicating for him probably to see the product on the field last Thursday. He used the word crisp. It was, and I was really questioning that. You know, I understand the short practices. I understand how efficient they've been, but you wonder just with the lack of grass time and the lack of hitting, really. I mean, they haven't even gone full thud a lot of these periods. Yeah. It's been soft in a lot of ways, but I can't remember a team in the first preseason game tackling as well as the Eagles did last week. That was the biggest shocker of that game. As well, as good as Hurts looked and as good as the offense looked, the defense was tackling after 75-minute practices where they don't tackle. That blew me away. Yeah. So it seems to be working. I know it's a small sample size, but early returns on Nick Sirianni pretty good. And it looks like his team is buying in, which is the biggest thing when you have a coach who's kind of bucking the trend and doing things differently.
The only Sirianni statement I'm still working through in my mind is the whole Kobayashi eating hot dogs thing. I haven't given up on it yet. I may figure it out yet, but it still perplexes me a little bit. But otherwise, I agree with everything you just said, Dave. When does the next Eagle Eye podcast drop?
We just did one with our buddies from NBC Sports Boston. It was a lot of fun. Tom Curran and Phil Perry kind of getting their perspective on the week, and we'll do one after the game on Thursday night, kind of recapping it all.
Make sure you check it out. He and Ruben Frank. David Zangaro, always a pleasure. Feel free to not brush your teeth again for another 5 hours.
All right, thanks, guys.
Our pleasure. Dave. That's David Zangaro from NBC Sports Philadelphia and his Eagle Eye podcast with Ruben Frank. You got the Mac and Mac guys, John McMullen, Jody McDonald, coming back to put a bow on this show here on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.